as the rainbow bird flew off, blown away by its own attack. I suddenly heard announced from nearby, another one of those nonsensical ramblings, which I immediately knew to be Rebecca casting another one of those spells. Glancing over to find her in front of the Goliath I was standing on, floating in air surrounded by a pink aura, twirling her finger in my direction as a blue light began to emit from her form, concentrated around the edge of her hand as arcs of electricity began to spark off from the location. Oh crap, I thought as I looked at her in the very instant before the lightning struck off. I'm fast, but dodging lightning? Come on, give me a freaking break here, were the only thoughts that were able to go through my mind as I began to try to move and get out of the course of the lightning bolt, as futilely as it may seem, before suddenly the gelatinous being that I had created once again was Johnny on the spot, appearing right in front of me in a rapid swirl of liquid motion, suddenly its form changing again, several long segments sticking out in front of it, hardening into what looked like metal spikes, while stringy arcs of the liquid metal extended over and around me, some digging their way down into the shoulder of the creature we were standing on as the lightning bolt struck out, impacting the cage-like form that the being in front of me had taken, the arcs of electricity pulsing through it, arcing off of the cage-like form as a massive bolt of electricity surged through it. None of it reached me. All of it seemed to arc off down into the creature or away into the air. Somehow my gelatin friend had created a lightning shield. I didn't even know you could do that. It never even occurred to me to try that. But then again, I didn't really have that much time to think about it. Whatever this thing was, its response time was absolutely absurd, responding to danger almost before I knew there was danger. Before I can even think of a reaction, it's already got a counter. But it's still not good. As far as the situation goes, this thing is spending most of its time saving my ass, and that's gotta take a toll. The liquid metal can only bear so much strain before it starts to lose out. The more attacks it takes, the more likely it is to start losing its overall size, and therefore power. I thought to myself as its form began to shift back, Rebecca's lightning subsiding, returning to its gelatinous humanoid form, as we stared out at Rebecca together. I need to find some way to make this work. Currently, I'm basically useless. This thing's doing all the work. But the problem is, I just can't move fast enough. With Rebecca's ability to teleport, this giant, and that bird flying around, there are too many obstacles. And as fast as I am, I'm also ground-bound. Normally, I have the liquid metal to make attacks of my own, but I've sacrificed it all in order to create it. And while it is incredibly powerful and useful, it's spending all of its time saving my ass doesn't really help me win the fight. I have to be able to strike blows of my own, make moves. Right now, I'm beginning to feel like a third wheel, like it's just dragging me along. I need some way for us to work together. And how the hell do I even communicate something like that, let alone achieve it? I thought as I stared out at Rebecca past the silver blob creature, as curiously enough, the blob-like entity seemed to turn its gelatin-formed head in my direction, looking over its shoulder, as if I had tried to get its attention somehow. It caught me a bit off guard, as once again, in a rapid flurry of liquid motion, the creature broke itself down into streams that began pouring in my direction, wrapping around all the different segments of my body. Legs, arms, chest, the liquid metal state, changing and morphing, beginning to take shape around me, as once again large bat-like wings protruded from my back. But this time, the overwhelming glob of goo affixed to my back was no longer there. Along with it, streams of hardened liquid metal seemed to form around my chest, like braces, holding itself in place as a segment of liquid metal swirled in front of me, taking a very recognizable shape. A sword, which I didn't hesitate to reach out and grab as I began to see the hilt forming. More liquid metal wrapped around my left arm, increasing the size of my glove, making it far denser. Along with that, there were some sort of bracers that started to form on my legs and feet as liquid metal began to cover the mask I wore like an extra layer, wrapping over the top of it. And freakiest of all, a set of second arms protruded themselves from a lower segment of my torso. As I looked about myself, watching these arms solidify themselves, no longer taking on the gelatin-like form that the creature itself had taken. No, these seemed to be mimicking the normal form of my regular armor, and yet, though there were no arms inside of it, the arms themselves seemed to move of their own accord, without me having to think about it at all. As I stared at them utterly confused, the right arm, or the extra right arm, lifted itself up a bit, closing itself into a fist, and raising the thumb. It was giving me the thumbs up. What the hell was that? What is it? What is this state? It was at that point that Nylea's voice popped into my head. Remember, Keven, this entity that you have created may be different from the regular liquid metal that you create. However, it still is liquid metal and abides by all the same constructs. It is not bound by your will. However, it still possesses all of the same abilities, including the ability to pick up on your telekinetic wavelengths. What? I thought to Nylea. Are you saying it can read my mind? Well, not really. But then again, I suppose understanding your line of thought and reasoning through your telekinetic wavelength, it could be considered reading your mind. Well, is it or not? Well, no, not exactly. To be specific, just like your regular liquid metal, it picks up on your telekinetic wavelength. Normally, when you interact with the liquid steel, you have to deliver specific intent. It's not as if you can just have a thought or idea, and the liquid steel will just act on its own. You have to focus, give it form and function, direction and orders. There's an intense amount of detail. You have to be the one to create and enforce all details through focused thought, concentration, and the honing of your skills. However, this entity has consciousness of its own. Before, you had to focus in order to get the liquid steel to abide your will, come up with the ideas yourself. But remember, this creature, being that it has consciousness of its own, it can still hear your will through your telekinetic wavelength. Even when it lacks form, you had a desire. You wanted you and the creature to be able to work together. Most likely, the entity picked up on your thought waves. Your desire and intention was carried out through your thought waves. It felt it, and using its knowledge and abilities, it's basically trying to grant that desire, give you what you wanted. By the looks of it, it determined that the most efficient way for you to work together was for you to be basically one and the same, no longer two separate entities. Now your physical forms are joined. It believes that this will be the best amalgamation to fit your desire. Okay, note to myself. Blob thing can read my mind. Or at least my intent. Second note to self. Blob thing is very creative. Remember to give Blob thing bonus points for artistic style and creativity. To be honest, I don't think I could have come up with this myself, at least on such short notice. Is there a way to give Blob Monster a treat? I thought for a moment as I reached one hand up, scratching the side of my helmet, trying to figure out how to reward a creature that's made entirely of liquid mucus. I mean, it's not like I can go to the store and get treats for it like a dog. Or would that be insulting? I think this thing's smarter than a dog. Yeah, definitely smarter than a dog.